Hi, I'm Baz, a member of the Teen Advisory Board with the Howard County Library System, and today I'm going to be teaching the skills needed for basic two-dimensional needle felting. Before we begin, here's a quick look at what our final product will be: a penguin. Now, let's gather our materials. Some of these are not completely necessary for every project, like a pen and paper, but they certainly can be helpful. First, we have a pencil and paper, which I will be sketching my design for the penguin onto. Next is an inking pen to draw the design onto the felt that we will be felting onto. I don't always draw out my designs like this, but once again, it can be a helpful guide as you work. This is a standard foam block. This will catch the needle when you are using the needle to bind the roving to the felt. And here we have the felt that I'll be using, as well as a pair of scissors to cut out the square we want to put our design on. These were right-handed scissors on a fairly thick piece of felt, and I am left-handed, so I eventually opted to use a rotary cutter, but often either is fine to use. Just keep in mind you will need some kind of self-healing or otherwise thick board under the felt if you want to use the rotary cutter. Next, we have our felting needle. Now this is a special needle with little barbs on the end. This helps as you stab the roving to catch its fibers and tangle them together to form a solid surface. And finally, we have our roving. I liked these colors together, this orange, white, blue, and dark brown, but you can use any that you want. Roving is basically cleaned and often dyed sheep's wool. Currently, the strands of the wool are all facing one direction, but once you start stabbing into it with your barbed needle, the fibers will cross paths and bind together, and as you stab them into the felt, they will also bind to the felt. It is possible to just felt the roving to itself in 3D needle felting, but that will need to be its own tutorial. Now, let's sketch out our design. I eventually settled on this penguin. Once I was happy with the design, I cut out the felt to the size of my drawing with the rotary cutter. I redrew the design on the felt with a thick inking pen, and now we can begin felting. See how easy that looks? Well, let's slow it down a bit. So first, you might want to stab the foam block a couple times, just to get used to the motion. Now, take a bit of roving. You can start small and always add more later. I'm shaping it slightly with my hands to make it rounder rather than long and skinny before placing it down on my felt. And now you can start stabbing and binding the roving to the felt. The more you stab it, the more firm the roving will be on the felt. And so you can keep filling in the design section by section. This can take a long time, so I'd suggest listening to something, like music or a podcast. Just make sure you can keep your eyes on your work. If you're watching something at the same time as needle felting and you look up, that's when you're most likely to poke yourself with the needle. Also, if you feel like you need them, you can get different types of finger protectors. Once you finish the stomach and face, you can start on your next color for the wings and the top of the head. Since this frames the first color we used, you can clean up the edges of the first color by layering over a clean edge of your new color. And when you come to the edges, you can tuck the stray fibers into place with the needle, one by one, to nicely form your edge. Now, we are moving on to smaller details, like feet, eyes, the heart, and the outline of the wings. When moving on to these details, you may want to roll the roving with your hands into little strands to create smaller lines. And remember that you can tuck in the edges even more if you need to and layer up to create those clean lines. And after all that work, here's the final product. I think it turned out rather well, and hopefully you're able to learn some felting tips along the way. Thank you for watching, good luck, and goodbye.